one of the keys, I think, to solving these problems that I discuss is to understand psychopathic behavior. These families, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Warburg, Schiffs, all these are psychopaths, and apparently what they do, and what I think one of the reasons for their inbreeding is, they think it's not just arrogance because they think that they're better than everybody else. That's part of it, but is they realize that in order to have this control over the world, they have to make sure that their children are psychopaths. Whether they call themselves and their children psychopaths, but they have to be psychopaths. These families apparently do practice Satanism, but the kind of what might seem bizarre to many people is most of these people are completely materialistic. They don't really believe in Satan. They don't really believe in heaven or hell or an afterlife or anything spiritual. It's all about material world to these people. Okay? But they realize that Satanism has certain effects on people that they like. It creates fear, for one thing, and that can help them stay in power. One of the reasons they stay in power is because everybody's afraid of them, all right? But they also use it to test their children, because they have their children go through these satanic rituals, which involve rape, blood sacrifice, and torture, and all kinds of stuff. And the ones that don't seem to be fazed by that kind of stuff, they know are psychopaths, and they put them in power. And the ones that do seem to be bothered by that kind of stuff, they realize they're not psychopaths, so they kind of put them on the sidelines. You notice a lot of these rags to riches stories, if you dig deeper, you find out these rags to riches people are also related to these families. That's because they put a lot of their families on the sidelines, but they still monitor their children, and they still often have their children get involved in the satanic rituals, even though they might just have a mediocre job. That's like Disney. Disney seems like he was a rags to riches guy, just some ordinary guy. But you notice all of a sudden, he's just a cartoonist, a mediocre cartoonist making cartoons in his garage or whatever. And the next thing you know, everybody is showing his cartoons because they realized he had psychopathic tendencies and he had some artistic ability, and they realized they could use this in this new art form that they were going to be using to manipulate people. They knew he was a perfect candidate for it, so they built him up. He got built up, okay? I guarantee you, an average person is not part of these families. I don't care how good a cartoonist you are, you're not going to get promoted if you're not part of these families and they don't want to use you, okay? In the limbic system, a normal person, the limbic system in your brain, when somebody sees something painful happen to another person, they have an emotional response themselves. If they hurt somebody intentionally or out of anger or whatever, they feel bad about that later on because that's an emotional response, and it helps us to get along with each other, and it keeps us from hurting each other. Psychopaths don't have that, okay? When a psychopath sees something painful happen to another human being or an animal, they have no emotional response. So psychopaths do not feel guilt, they do not feel shame, they do not feel remorse. And there's a lot of advantages to doing that if you want to take over the world and control everybody, because they know if they put psychopaths in power, they know they can orchestrate wars for profit. These people are not going to be upset about the fact that they're killing millions of innocent people for profit. They don't want people that are going to be bothered by that. They put people in industry because they can make lots of money in stealing and swindling from people, and they're not going to feel conscious. They're not going to feel guilty about it. And one of the reasons I know so much about psychopathic behavior, I was married to a psychopath, a narcissistic psychopath. A narcissist is somebody who needs attention. A psychopath is somebody who has no conscience, okay? Has no emotional response. But she was very confusing to me. I didn't know anything about psychopaths, or knew little about psychopaths then when I was married to her. Unfortunately, I would have been a lot better able to deal with her. The thing is, she would overact compassion, okay? And I didn't realize that this was a game that she was doing to get attention. If something bad would happen to somebody or an animal or something, she'd go, oh, awful, and she would accuse you, you're not feeling guilty enough, she would accuse you not feeling guilty because you weren't going, oh, and so then you were not compassionate, so she would lay a guilt trip on you. But it was always about getting attention. She needed attention all the time, and she didn't care whether it was positive or negative attention. She would make a scene in public frequently. I never could understand why she was doing this. It was to get attention. She'd go up and slap you in the face if she wanted. I couldn't understand why she would do something like that. She was, one, to get attention, and two, she had no empathy. So she had no emotional reaction to the fact that she just hurt you. That didn't bother her at all because she has no emotional reaction to that. If I was just sitting in a room reading a chair, I wasn't paying attention to her. So she needed my attention, so she would verbally or physically come up and slap me in the face. Usually it was verbal, and the things she would say to me were just horrible. I mean, I've been bullied all my life, but she said things that made the bullies at school seem pretty tame. It was unbelievable, the things that she said to me. Why did I put up with it? Several reasons. First of all, I don't know why, but for some reason, normal women have never been interested in me. So this is the first time a woman was interested in me. One of the reasons I put up with it as long as I did. Another reason, we had children, and I believe that families should stick together through thick and thin. But I put up with way too much for way too long. But yeah, she always had to be the center of attention. It didn't matter what it was. I mean, you know, like I said, she'd make a scene right in the middle of Walmart, and because she knew she could get away with it. She needed the attention, and she knew she'd get away with it. Women in this culture can usually get away with a lot more than men can. If a man makes a scene in public, he's liable to either get beat up or arrested. Women can get away with a lot more. Now, if she was to take her clothes off and run down the aisles of Walmart knocking stuff off the shelves, that would be going too far, and then she would get arrested. So she knew that, so she didn't go that far. Otherwise, she would probably have loved to have done something like that, because she'd get a lot of attention. Running down the aisles of Walmart knocking stuff off the shelves, that would get lots of attention. She would love that, but she didn't want to go to jail. See, psychopaths can think, okay? They can rationalize. There's nothing wrong with their thinking. Some psychopaths are extremely intelligent. The ones who are extremely intelligent can do a lot more damage than the ones that aren't so intelligent, unfortunately. And she was a very intelligent psychopath. There's other times, like my ex-wife, she would act like she didn't care about anything. You know, she would deliberately hurt people, and it didn't seem to bother her at all. And other times she'd be overacting, and I could never understand that. Well, it's because she had no feelings for anybody suffering, okay, including her own children. But she would act that way because she had something to gain. And psychopaths often learn to mimic emotions they don't have for effect, if they want something, to manipulate people. And many psychopaths are very good at manipulation. And one of the reasons they're so good at manipulation is because they don't have a conscience. A conscience is like a brake that keeps most people from doing things that are going to harm others. Psychopaths don't have that type of braking system. But psychopaths, they enjoy sex. They like power, and narcissistic psychopaths like attention. Not all psychopaths are narcissistic. Some psychopaths aren't that concerned about attention. So probably one of the best ways of dealing with a psychopath is to try to convince them that their behavior is ultimately hurting themselves, all right? So that's what I try to do a lot of times on my videos, and I know some of them watch. Unfortunately, I'm sure not all of them do, and hopefully someday I will reach a higher percentage of them. Try to convince these Rothschilds and these Rockefellers that they are ultimately going to hurt themselves. They don't care about hurting other people. But if they destroy the atmosphere of this planet, they're not going to be able to breathe either, okay? If they destroy all of nature, they're going to also die, okay? They're trying to convince them of that, okay? They couldn't care less about destroying the atmosphere and destroying nature itself. But if they realize that's going to cause them pain and death, okay, that they can understand, they can relate to that, okay? So that's what I'm trying to do, okay? And they also seem to want to create a world where it's every man, every woman for himself, because they find out they can make more profit in a world where everybody's at each other's throats in a lot of ways. That they want to get rid of compassionate people because it gets in the way of their vision of trying to hoard more money and power for themselves. But they don't realize, and what I'm going to try to convince them is that if they want to live in a world where it's every man, every woman for him or herself, then where only psychopaths exist, okay, they will all destroy each other. When you live in a world where it's dog eat dog and everyone for themselves, the odds that you are going to get victimized increases. For instance, as I pointed out, if you look at the Romans, okay? They were torturing and murdering peasants as a form of entertainment, okay? But the Roman aristocrats were also getting killed. Because when you live in a world where life is cheap and has no meaning, where everybody's a psychopath, all the people in power are psychopaths, and human suffering doesn't mean anything to them, you got to realize it's going to happen to you. And many of these aristocrats got killed by each other. Even several Caesars got assassinated by their own family members. And the same thing happened with Stalin, you know. He was killing all of his subordinates who were killing everybody, and eventually Stalin got killed too. It's almost certain he was killed by foul play. You know? So if you're a psychopath, especially if you're one of these highfalutin Illuminati psychopaths, and you have no compassion or empathy for other human suffering, you do care about yourself. I know you care about yourself, okay? And you're concerned about your own pain and suffering. You wouldn't mind chopping somebody else up into a bunch of little pieces, but you don't want that to happen to you. So if you want to live in a world and you want to continue to try to create a world where life is cheap and pain and suffering of others has no meaning, you got to realize that you are increasing the odds that that's going to happen to you. All right? So perhaps that's the only way to try to reach these people. As the rest of us, I don't know, can deal with psychopaths, because normal people are afraid of psychopaths, and normal people don't have the stomach to go out and kill people that much, okay? And of course, the military kind of tries to teach people to be more psychopathic. But they're never 100% successful, because a lot of people have been in the military and have killed innocent people. A lot of times they have breakdowns later on. They're very upset about that. Psychopaths don't get upset about killing people. It never bothers them. It's not going to bother them 10 years or 5 minutes from now, you know. But it's hard to get ordinary people to commit murder and stuff. But you can do it. It's part of the brainwashing they do in basic training. You know, telling everybody they're a maggot and all this kind of stuff, and beating them down and breaking their will and their spirit, you know, kind of thing. So, I mean, to try to get an army of non-psychopaths to go out there and kill the Rothschilds and Rockefellers is difficult, because most people, non-psychopathic people, don't have the stomach to go out and do that kind of thing. Unless we can find a way to cure the cause of psychopathic behavior, the damaged limbic system, the best thing, I guess, to do is just try to convince these people that they are ultimately going to hurt themselves. They don't care about other people, but they do care about themselves. So I guess that's the best way to deal with this for now. And hopefully someday we can find a way to get rid of psychopathic behavior, but that's not going to be easy, because the psychopaths want to put psychopaths in power. But just realize that, you know, if we have all psychopaths running everything, eventually the whole world's going to destroy itself. Because what comes around goes around. It might take a while, but what comes around goes around.